Hello all, this is Peter Zapeta, and this is my presentation on Boudica. And there are many different ways that people have looked at Boudica. Some have looked at Boudica clearly in a literature way, and meaning all the times that Boudica has been presented in literature throughout history. There's also a feminist angle, purely because Boudica is a woman, more feminist leaning uh, historians will look into that. But then there's also a Celtic and Roman relation view, and that's what I'm going to look at in this presentation. So we have a few people here. We have John Walker, and he is an archaeologist that looks into uh, Roman archaeology. And this is the book that I have looked at, The Coming of Rome. We also have Bronwyn Riley, who has interest in Roman history as well as history of the country of Romania and Transylvania area. And then this guy with the white beard is Roy Strong. He is an British art historian, and he has written a book, The Story of Britain, which gives out a brief overview of British history, and he talks about Boudica in that. First things I like to cover before we start looking at these different interpretations. I would like to show off a Roman map of ancient Britain to see, so you will get a reference of some of the stuff I'll talk about. I'll start with this map, and over here in this bit is the Iceni, where the Iceni tribe live, and that is where Boudica is a part of. Also down here we have the town of Colchester, which I will talk about, and of course Londinium, which is now the British capital of London. I'm also going to talk about a rebellion that happened before Boudica, and that happened up around in Wales. Particularly, we're going to look at this island called Ainsley. So now we've gone on to Watcher, and he is archaeologist, as I've said, and he's thinks that there may have been influence with the Boudica's rebellion when the case with Druids. And it's with the events leading up to Boudica's rebellion, we have this figure, Caractacus, who rebelled. And during this rebellion, the Romans chopped down the sacred grove over at the Isle of Ainsley in northern Wales. We see a lot of Druid and sacred Celtic sacred sites in this island, particularly this burial mound is found on that island. There's also another client state to the south of the Iceni called the Trivontes, and when Rome came to confiscate their land, like they were going with the Iceni, they confiscated their sacred site of Gosh Hex, which became a Roman city, and which is now near the modern city of Colchester. And on this map, there is a archaeological site, and the three prominent things we can see on this are the three Roman sites, mainly this fort here. We have a temple, and this might have been where a sacred mound was built for the Celts. And we also have a theater, just like the Greeks, the Romans borrowed the theater. We also have Bronwyn Riley's take. And Bronwyn Riley wrote a book that goes over in detail the towns, the ports, and the travel that from Rome and then into Britain and the travel across Rome and Britain. So she, just like Watcher, uses a lot of archaeology. And she notes the scale of Boudica's rebellion. And you can actually, in London and in Colchester, there is a layer of red which goes back to the time of Boudica, and this is called the destruction layer, as Boudica burned London. We also have a map of London over here, and you'll note that these red sites are the Roman sites. These blue sites are more modern sites. So it's near St. Paul's and the Tower of London. But we see this is where the Roman Basilica, and this is the Roman marketplace. And then we also have several baths and some Roman temples that were found in this area. And last, we have Roy Strong. He gives this brief history of Boudica. He compares Caractacus, which I've mentioned previously, with Boudica, and noted that Caractacus was pardoned while Boudica was not. And he also claims that Boudica was more of a serious threat to Rome since she had burned the de facto capital of the region, London. He also goes and compares Celtic dwellings to sort of more Roman dwellings. And these Celts would live on these hill forts, as seen here, whereas Romans developed towns and walled towns with stone. And he wonders that Britain may not have became the powerhouse that it eventually would become if it wasn't for the Romans' invasion of Britain. And this is maybe a certainly interesting view, and certainly England tended to be the most dominant force, and that was the part of Britain where Rome occupied. Scotland was not occupied by Rome and tended to be poor, and it wasn't until industrial times when Scotland became an industrial center and eventually gain more wealth. He also, in his book, he gives this brief history all the way to the time of Brexit. And one thing that I would probably ask Roy Strong is if he could see Boudica as maybe being a symbol for Brexit as Rome conquers the continent and pushes his rule and Boudica resists. Is this a symbol of Boudica, of Britain resisting influence from the European continent? But that's my own thoughts on the matter. These are my sources that I used, and I used Braun and Wiley's Edge of the Empire, Roy Strong's The Story of Britain, and John Watcher's The Coming of Rome. And throughout these books, we get maybe three views. First, we get the culture and the sacred view of the Celts. We get a size scale of how big this rebellion was. And then we get how this event and how the Roman invasion affects Britain and affects Britain even today.